Welcome to the hybrid EV meeting for October 8th, 2022. All right, cool. And then we'll start the meeting. So Jerry, Jerry and I will be closer, and we've learned something from this experience. Great. So let's start with intros. This is going to be interesting. I thought that with our intros, we could really quickly say, you know, where else do you charge besides home? But let's make it brief, and we'll also make news brief, and then we'll kind of focus on making sure we have enough time to hear from Woody. Woody will be presenting on the new legislation in California, which I don't understand, so I'm really excited about that, and also Proposition 30. So if that sounds good, I'll start and have Jerry go, and then I'll find you guys on the screen. So I'm Sonia Carey. I'm the president this year of the Electric Vehicle Association, and I drive a Model 3. And when I take road trips, I usually charge at Tesla superchargers. So that would be my alternative. And if the power goes out at my house, I would charge at the Roanoke Park Tesla supercharger. Jerry?
I'm Jerry Glazer, in small. Right now. This is my ADU. I'm driving a Nissan Leaf 2018. I keep looking for a new car, but I don't want to pay the extra $10,000 yet. And I charge mostly at home. There's a slide that we'll talk about charging later in the day.
Okay, great. I see Tor. Tor, you want to say hi?
Sure, yeah. Let's see, still driving a Bolt, although it took a few weeks off. In September, traveled to Norway, and I'm seeing all kinds of electric cars. I think half my pictures were all the electric cars on the road. Interesting. I learned a little bit about what they're doing. But as far as on the road, yeah, I use Electrify America, EVgo, ChargePoint, whatever's available. And they each have their challenges, but you know, we learned how to get where I need to go. Thanks.
Ellen? Ellen's on mute. Ellen, if you hear me and you can go off mute, feel free to say hi.
Hi, it's Ellen. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I'm still driving my Nissan Leaf. I don't go far from home, so I don't really need to charge anywhere except at home.
Well, thanks for being here today, Ellen. It's good to see your name on the screen again. Brad?
Hi, yeah, I'm Brad Morrison. I live normally in Santa Rosa, California. I happen to be in Maui this week. I normally get around with a 2004 Honda Civic Hybrid. This past week, the rental car has been I don't know, maybe a 2020 or 2021 Kia Optima. I haven't seen a single, I'm just trying to remember. I don't think I've seen a single electric vehicle that was a rental car on Maui so far. But it's kind of hard to tell. There is one Nissan Leaf in the hotel parking lot, but I don't think, because it's so old, I don't think it's a rental car. Anyways, yep.
Well, it would be really interesting to talk about Hawaiian Islands electric vehicle transition. If you pick up any details and want to do a presentation, I'd love to hear about it. Caleb?
Yeah, so Caleb Leonard, I live in Orange County, I live in Newport Beach, and I drive a 2015 BMW i3, which is actually behind me over there somewhere. And I charge almost exclusively at home, but on occasion I do a fast charge at like an Electrify America, or maybe some top up at charge points and things like that. When I lived in Washington, I used to use the Blink network quite a lot, and that was the primary network around Vancouver, Washington. But those were historically a bit unreliable. So there's almost always one of them down. But the Electrify Americas down here have been very reliable. And the charge points typically are reliable. I mean, you can kind of see if they're available or not. So it's kind of me.
Mike?
Right. Good morning, everybody. So, yeah, besides home charging, I occasionally do workplace charging. We've got, I think, about 15 chargers at the place I work, but I pretty much now leave them for others because my commute's super short, and trying to advocate other people switching over. I did drive an Archimoto since I participated in a meeting last. I did the San Francisco Go Cars have got I think 5 Archimotos now, and so you could do the little tour around San Francisco with Archimotos. So that was pretty fun.
For $300.
$350 for all day, and then yeah, they have some other plans, but yeah,
Wow.
it was worth it.
Okay. It was worth it? That's
Yeah.
cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cecilia? Going up.
Hi, I'm Cecilia Sullivan. I'm the Vice President of the NBEAA, and I live in Ukiah in Mendocino County. And I drive a 2018 Model 3, and I do most of my charging at home, although when I do travel down to contrast the county, I do make use of one of the cheaper superchargers there.
David Harris?
Yes, David Harrison, Santa Rosa, and we have a 2020 Leaf that's going to go off of lease here in a few months, and a 2017 Bolt. And our most recent charge was at the Nissan dealership in Petaluma, where we got our first Leaf in 2011. That was back in the days of Blink. They now have an ABB charger. It has both a CHAdeMO and a CCS, but I was quite shocked that we had trouble getting it to unplug afterwards. We ended up, turning the car off and on, and then one of the employees came out, and we had to hit the emergency stop button to finally get the thing to release. I'm collecting stories on all of the, when I'm charging, I saw a VW that couldn't get unplugged.
I had not heard of cars being hijacked by their charging station.
Yep.
Locked in place.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, I guess that makes sense that things would go wrong that way.
Well, in Teslas, you get in the trunk and you can pull a cord in there. And
I think I knew that and forgot that, because it's just like, you don't need to know. Woody?
Good morning, all. Woody Hastings, and live in Sebastopol, and still getting around with a 2013 Chevy Volt with a V as in Victor. And pretty much all of our charging is at home. We do if we're going on a long trip and we've exhausted the electric, and we're going to be someplace for a while. We do try to find places to charge, but they're just not tons of them, and we usually charge at charge point. So it's mostly home charging.
Well, I'm hearing everyone very rarely charges alternatively. And I was curious because the Tesla adapter for CCS just came out, and it's compatible with newer Teslas, but not mine. And you can look it up. I can't remember if we have a slide on that this month. It's kind of more interesting for just Tesla owners, but I did run into a situation in Humboldt County on vacation where I used a 220 volt charge point because the 440 was CCS and I didn't have an adapter, but it was no big deal. So that concludes our introductions. I think I hit everyone, right? Yeah. So chapter business, Jerry can speak to this. I think Jerry and Caleb went to the EVA parent organization at Fully Charged and asked them about our balance. I also sent an email a week and a half ago asking for our ballot again. And we didn't, we're good now. So I'm going to skip forward pretty quickly. We all know how to email each other using different groups. We don't have a new member here today, but we did add NBEAA officers at googlegroups.com for chapter business. Anything you want to say?
The reason for that was that Zano had sent a message out saying we have a seat on the Sonoma County Transit Authority. The committee, the Citizens Advisory Committee, and they were going to drop our seats because we weren't showing up. Well, we didn't know we had a seat because they kept writing to Alan.
Yeah.
So what we have officers for is, as we change officers of the club, any external entity will communicate with us through officers.
So made sense to me. So we've streamlined how we post things and tell you about it. Everything's posted on nbeaa.org, including the video presentation, which we will hopefully get some smoother versions of, and the PDF of that presentation, which is a nice format for clicking links to the news, etc. We're looking for a speaker for November. We also need to talk about COVID. It's at its lowest level ever in the county since it started, is what I understand. We have under 500 cases in the whole county. So I'm wondering if we can talk with John and get to a conclusion in the next 2 weeks to decide to go back to Thunderstruck in November.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any concerns about doing that? You know, obviously you'll have your option of showing up or not. If we get hybrid right, you'll have your option of coming on Zoom or not. Does anyone have any information from kind of a healthcare perspective that that's a bad idea? Does anyone have any concerns?
Well, I think we do need to think about whether we require masks or not. I mean, I would be a bit cynical about whether the reason that numbers are so low is because people are doing self-tests, and those numbers don't get reported. So
I appreciate that. I think that it definitely affects the numbers. And the only challenge with masks is that the primary presenters and speakers are going to probably be fine in person, but it's going to be really hard to kind of track and be oriented and interested on Zoom.
well, I think that the mask question, if you've got your presenter, 10 feet away from everybody else, they don't need to wear a mask. I mean, that's the kind of thing that we think about, right?
Okay. So it's possible that we'll decide that people sitting near each other in the audience area can wear masks, and we'll see how that goes. Any other comments?
Well, I guess the other thing about masks would be, okay, if people have done a self-test in the X number of hours that's negative, or only require masks people who are not vaccinated. I mean, we got some choices there.
Yeah. I think masking when you're not vaccinated
Yeah.
is a minimum.
A minimum. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that was one of the things that I had in early slides. As I said, when we went back, that we would require people to be vaccinated. But the way that the population is working out, it's required that you be vaccinated or that you wear a mask. And that's where the protection is working out.
Yeah, and if we're under 20 people or under 40 people, I think, we're well within, our kind of any county kind of recommendations at that point. So my other assumption is that we're going to be a pretty small group. Great. We'll work on that. I keep cautioning Jerry, like, you might own all this equipment without ever getting reimbursed.
That's fine.
And Jerry seems fine with that, so we're okay. I'm going to skip over our annual goals and types of items because Zeno's out, and jump into
That was yours.
the newsy stuff. So recycling lithium batteries. It's 10:43. We have 17 minutes to talk about other things other than Woody's presentation. I'm excited about this. Redwood Materials, was started by J.B. Straubel, who was an executive at Tesla, and he really wanted to solve the problem of kind of that cradle to cradle recycling need for lithium ion batteries. They're crunching them up and doing them right now, and you can ship them to Nevada as much as you'd like. In addition to that, on October 22nd, you could run down to Novato and drop off lithium ion batteries. They're, doing a lot of phone batteries, small scale lithium ions from computers, etc. There's nothing they won't take that's lithium ion, I
Is
think.
that right?
Yeah, they'll take it all. And I don't know, some things are big and heavy, I suppose. I don't know if anybody has things, but we can keep an eye on their website, and I assume they'll have more events.
If you want to get more details on it, there's a Storage X session on it from about 7 months ago. And he gave an hour-long presentation on what they were doing, how they were doing it, and what they were trying to do in the future.
Yep. Great. I don't know why we have this one in here. Twice. Okay. I didn't notice it, sorry. So I've been trying, Zeno had asked me to highlight that the EVA, has been running their blog and running some good news. It's tough to beat the hard-hitting reporters at Bloomberg or something like that, but they're doing their best, and they've got some news that keeps, popping up on the site at myeva.org. This month, it's a 620-mile Mercedes prototype that caught my eye. I assume, even though it's a prototype, that they have figured out how to fit 620 miles into an expensive car. Yeah.
The car had a lot of aero on it. It was very, very low resistance.
Oh, really? That's interesting too. So it was efficient. That's good to hear.
Yeah. If you look at it, it looked like a Lightyear one, actually.
So I did most of the slides this time, so I won't do a lot of speaking. By the way, if you feel confident to get to the screen and make that bigger, fine. That's on the second screen on the right-hand side. Yeah, there. See if you can make that fill up the screen so we can see them better. Good, great, thank you. Well, one of the things I saw, your no gas, what he seems to be catching on. Basically, gasoline is losing popularity, and the volumes of gasoline being sold continues to drop across the country. Price is obviously part of that, especially here in California. We're running almost $2 a gallon more than the rest of the country. And it's not EVs that are doing it. It's that people are driving less, they're driving more efficient vehicles. But as we said last month, here in the Bay Area, EVs is definitely impacting 27% of new car sales last 6 months in the Bay Area were electric vehicles. California, 16% were electric vehicles. Across the country, a little bit over 5%.
David, you have your hand up?
Yeah, too, on the gasoline, the news this week was that California was permitting the refiners to switch to winter fuel early. They could start now, and that shocked me to hear that represents more than $1 a gallon. So that we are going to see a bit of a close in the price difference between California and the rest of the country. And on EVs, I think I heard that is it Great Britain's already up to 25% of new car sales.
Yeah.
So the US at 5%, we are definitely, don't fool ourselves. We're not leading the world.
Yep.
No, we're not leading the world, but Bloomberg pointed out that for new technologies, 5% is the threshold at which the curve bends and you accelerate very rapidly. This was an article picked up that Hertz plans to order 175,000 EVs. Let's just say EV, RV from GM. I missed that when I went back to go edit the slides for the next 5 years. Let's fix that before we post the slides. And that's going to include Chevy, Buick, GMC, Cadillac. One of my friends asked me about an EV Cadillac. And I had to look up drop EVs.
Right.
These are delivery vans. So they're expecting the first ones to start showing up. And they estimate over a 5-year period that EVs will travel 8 billion miles through their rentals.
High usage, isn't that great?
We're surprising it's only 38 states. I don't know which 12 states are not going to be included. And that they had a goal that by the end of 2024, a lot of things happening by 2024, that 25% of their fleets would be EVs. By the way, the first time I rented an EV from Hertz was in 2002. And I rented an iThink from Hertz for 3 months because I loaned my car to my son. And pissed off everybody on Highway 80, as 85, as I was driving to work in the commuter lane at 55 miles an hour, because an iThink doesn't go faster than that.
Yep.
Charging at night. This is interesting. This is a Stanford study that said we're charging at the wrong time, and the schedules that we have, the tariffs that we have in California are wrong, incentivizing us to charge after midnight. We should be charging during the day. And this week, I also had a meeting, or last week, I had a meeting with the CEO of Sonoma Clean Power to discuss a number of topics. And he was very much on the case that we should be incentivizing EVs to charge during the day. And next month, which I won't be here for next month, I posted an article with one solution for charging EVs during the day. And we'll see how Sonoma presents that. But at Sonoma Clean Power, at their parking lot, when they built a new facility, he put in a charge station at each one of the parking spaces. And at the beginning of the year, 3 of the 40 employees drove EVs to work. He said by the end of the year, 32 employees were driving EVs to work. And he has the EV charge stations programmed so that they only turn on when the carbon content of power drops below a certain threshold. And that's during the middle of the day. And so his push was, let's charge our cars with clean energy instead of charging our cars when we have predominantly carbon energy, which is after midnight.
I think the utilities want us to charge at night when they have excess energy from their power plants.
They
And
used to, yeah.
and they, but they still are always going to have some excess
They're exporting. They actually have to pay to export the energy.
midnight to 5.
Yeah, but as it's changing, it turns out they actually pay today to export energy out of the state in the middle of the day because we have surplus energy at times.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll move forward. Tesla funded for large supercharger sites.
Somebody else posted.
Sonia, I see that David Harris has had his hand up for a while.
David, was that from before, or did you have a question?
That was from before.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think I posted this. So Tesla has been funded for large supercharger sites through some rural allocation of money to create rural superchargers. But when I looked at where they're located, they're all located on kind of through routes, you know, San Diego to Las Vegas, LA to Las Vegas, San Francisco to San Diego, et cetera. And so I was really curious from an urban planning perspective, whether or not these locations were going to be kind of tucked in or right out on the freeways. You know, to me, if I lived in, I don't know, Coalinga or Barstow, maybe lots of things happen out on the interstates. Anyway, I'm not sure, but I thought of Ukiah actually, Cecilia, as a great example of where to place superchargers. They're off Highway 101 in the downtown area. And when you get there, you go have lunch. It's really a nice kind of like a urban planning kind of way of looking at superchargers. So
When I put the article together, I did look at the physical sites that they had so far. And
Yeah.
they weren't totally identified, but all of them are next to highways. And
Yeah.
that's the reason for making so many chargers, because you expect a bunch of people to show up because they're traveling.
So my thought was that the legislators thought this was rural infrastructure.
Yeah.
And it just isn't, and that's okay.
And by the way, Tesla also said, most of these sites, they're going to try to be power ones and so on.
Yeah.
So they also include very large battery arrays, so that they can power up and dump from the batteries into the cars.
Right. Well, I already started this conversation about the CCS adapter, $250, and we all run around with the J1772 adapters, which was $99, by the way. But this one's
Right, and
price is good.
And they also had supplied a Chatham adapter, but the Chatham adapter is something like $3,000.
Oh.
So this is very different.
Are you getting one, Cecilia?
Maybe next year.
Yeah. And we have to do a little retrofit on our older Teslas to get it to work.
Oh, that's right. That showed up in models before October 2020 don't support this, and they haven't scheduled yet until next year to retrofit for those models. I was wondering how the protocol point of view.
I'm hoping the retrofit is included in the cost like they did in Europe when they did that for the Model S and X to add CCS support, but we'll see.
Got it.
Yeah, there's no indication. The one article I saw said retrofit would cost $1,300.
I was thinking maybe next year also, just because I was planning some big road trips. But $1,300 is like, you start to weigh like, do I want to just hang out in this town?
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk to this one?
Oh, yeah. I brought this one up in some other meetings as well. I saw this one where Volta has been putting up charge stations with advertising on them. And when I read the article, I thought, well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, it turns out there's a rationale for doing this. If you have advertising on a charge station and you don't have a charge station which is used constantly, then you can actually pay for the charge station. So it now allows them to put charge stations in neighborhoods where they couldn't necessarily afford to do it before, because maybe the stations can be used for 2 hours or 3 hours a day. They can't afford to pay for the station. But if there's enough foot traffic or whatever going by, the advertising pays for the cost of the installation of the station itself. So we might start seeing this. It's kind of a Google model of providing service.
They have them at Whole Foods here.
What's that, Caleb?
They have these at Whole Foods in Orange County.
With ads on them?
Yeah,
I was thinking-
they're Volta chargers.
Ads do not increase carbon that much.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess there's some servers running somewhere.
No, this does require municipal code modification, because now you're advertising, and almost every code says where you can put up signs and what signs look like, and within certain criteria. And that's why the city of Hoboken was involved in whether they could install them and what they would look like when they were installed.
David, you had a comment?
Yeah, Volta, to my knowledge, the only ones I know here are at Kohl's. And when I saw this article about the advertising, I sent an email to the sales director at Jim Bone Kia and asked him if he said they hadn't heard about it there yet, but so I don't know who, you know, obviously most of the businesses aren't going to have heard of this, but Kia has, I mean, Kohl's has nationwide. I think they're on that path also.
Yeah, and Woody, I did forward this to your transportation team in Sebastopol, didn't I?
Yes, you did. Thanks.
That reminds me, if anyone's waiting for an Ioniq 5, I saw a semi trailer coming through with a bunch of them yesterday. So let's do this one and then talk about the city of Santa Rosa buses and hand it off to Woody.
Well, and just an announcement, that the first UL approved vehicle to grid charger for residential use has been approved, UL approved. I checked with our building department in Sebastopol and asked Steve if I want to put one of these in, would you have any problems? If it's UL approved, I have no problem. Now PG&E may have a problem, but Steve won't. And I don't know what PG&E does as far as the generators. So and downstairs underneath this apartment, I put in a 50 amp circuit for the next EV with the intention that it would have a vehicle to grid charger on it.
So you might have to join a pilot to get.
Well, and there's a pilot,
approval.
and I've spoken to the director at PG&E who's was running the pilot, but she's since left PG&E, so I've got to get to the next. Tora and I both spoke with her. So we need to get to the new person.
Yeah. Do you think there's a slide on the city of Santa Rosa buses that we can
Yeah.
hit? Oh, it was that one.
Yep. So I attended the Sonoma County Transit Authority Client Citizens Action Committee, and I was quiet as usual, so kept asking questions. One of the questions I asked was, we finally got and had a presentation by Santa Rosa, Petaluma, the county, and also SMART on what they're doing. And Santa Rosa, Brian, who's spoken to us before, said that by the end of 2024, he intends to have 45% of the Sonoma County buses will be electric. Right now, there's only 2 or 3. And Petaluma and Santa Rosa City Bus said the same thing, that their intention is 45% of their buses will be EV buses by that point in time. 19 spaces are being made at the county yard. PG&E is working on how to do that. I talked to a person at PG&E about the challenges, because I want to know why they weren't doing putting charge
Distributed yards.
Yeah, distributed yards. You know,
Yeah.
But they're not planning on it. He's going to have it all centralized. And so consequently, the buses that they're getting have a 320-mile range, as opposed to what most of the transit buses show, which is about 150 miles worth of range.
So if they had distributed yards, they could get shorter range buses and run them on routes nearby. And I'm really curious about why they wouldn't choose to do distributed yards as well.
I don't know why. The other thing that goes along with this, I asked some questions about. Also have a role with the NTC Policy Advisory Council, and I was frustrated with not being able to get from Sebastopol to San Francisco in less than a day for a meeting. And I was pointing out that I should be able to ride the Sonoma County bus and then transfer to a Santa Rosa City bus and pay no additional fee to do that. And I said, well, that didn't exactly work. The NTC is also working on something which has to do with fares as well. I'm on that group as well. That will now cut down the cost of fares and hopefully ultimately will save. I'm going from point A to point B, and it doesn't make any difference how many different means you transfer to or from, that you pay one fare.
Yeah. Well, they seem to be going in the right direction very slowly. I know they have 11 buses paid for, and I think they're just awaiting delivery, right? Like, you know, everything's backed up a little bit, so
Well, there's
that's
some-
the other part.
There's some approval that has to be done by the supervisors as well for the buy.
Yeah, David?
They sure as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about buses, but I just wanted to bring up Smart. You know, Smart has Cummins diesel,
Yeah.
and Cummins does make an electric drive. So I have not heard any discussion of Smart converting to all electric, but I think it's becoming feasible because their diesel manufacturer actually makes one for truck use. So I would think it somewhere down the line, obviously they'd be headed to be able to electrify Smart. But on the Smart topic, we all need to be concerned that ridership is down so much in public transit, and Smart needs to go back on the ballot. And the fact that Smart is so invisible to, you know, 95% of the population, at least, I think is a big problem. And I was pushing to get the overcrossing that's going to get built for bicycle and pedestrians over 101 to have signage that tells you that Smart's right here at this exit and the next train is in blank minutes. But you know, we haven't even gotten that far to
David, all of that is actually being discussed, and some of it, one is the ridership has been recovering. It was part of the report, so it's been going back up slowly. The major problems turn out to be two things. One of them has to do with finding drivers, both for buses and for the trains. The Smart, not being an electric Caltrain in South Bay, is now being converted to electric. It amazed me that Smart wasn't electric to start with. They had no discussion on that, but they have been having discussion about how they're going to have their own shuttle to go from the Smart train to the airport, for instance, so that you can make that move. So they're aware of all of those problems. The other thing, the other task force I'm on with the MTC is working on signage, and both with Smart, the Smart already has it, but all of the buses now are getting new signs, which will say next bus in. And we'll have kinds of things that we see in Amsterdam that says, you know, if you're transferring such and such, it's late or it's on time, etc. The frequency is actually a big problem.
Yeah, we'll
right,
see how
but
that.
my point was that if you're going down up and down 101 and stuck in traffic, it would be an appropriate time for people to see that Smart was operating, and you don't see that. I mean, you know, having it at the stop is not communicating to the people who are oblivious to the fact that they have an alternative.
Yeah, that's
and so that I could figure out more about transit, I started riding transit just to go to meetings, and which takes a very long time. But I was measuring the speed of Smart. It runs at over 70 miles an hour.
Yeah. Let's skip forward. I'm so sorry we didn't pause on that smiley car that you guys took a picture of. I love that little smiley car from I think it's from China.
What you take it into next month.
All right, we'll show
some more too.
We'll talk about fully charged in San Diego and cute cars next month. But Woody, would you like to kick it off?
Sure. Thanks, Sonia. Thanks everybody for having me on for this review of the 2022 California legislation session. I think most of you may know that I track legislation and work on state policy at the Climate Center, nonprofit organization based in Sonoma County, but working statewide. I also help track it for the Sebastopol Climate Action Committee. I serve on that committee, and I serve on the transportation subcommittee. So I've been tracking it a bit, ones that are relevant for cities like Sebastopol been tracking it for that subcommittee. There were like 2,400 bills introduced in the last session. That's more than usual, and that's because there was restrictions on the number of bills that legislators were allowed to introduce during COVID. So there was just an enormous number of bills. No, I won't be going through 2,400 bills. I boiled it down to just a few. A couple things I wanted to mention we do have a public facing tracker, bill tracking on the Climate Center, and it's going to be completely revamped for 2023 to make it much more easily searchable. So at the next meeting or something, I'll post a link to that. Bill tracker, once it's up and running, our new website's we're gonna have a completely revamped website coming up soon. So yeah, the session just, I was still on the intro page, but that's all right. Last point I wanted to make was that September 30th was the last day for the governor to sign or veto bills. And so this is what you're right now on the page I wanted to talk on, which is, didn't get to it. Yeah, so there are 7 bills, and what the heck? Oh, I'm sorry. There are 7 bills that were signed that are favorable to EVs. There are several bills that were either died or were vetoed by the governor. And so, but I'll just touch on 2 of them, and then we will move to Prop 30. And I hope we can take some time to talk about that, because that's something everybody will have a chance to weigh in on November 8th. So next slide. All right, so AB 1738, Bernard Horvath bill, is a bill that requires EV charging infrastructure upgrades at what they call trigger points, when existing multifamily dwellings, schools, hotels, motels, and other non-residential development happens. So it's retrofitting for EV charging during those trigger points. Next slide. AB 1909. So what this bill is all about is that there had been existing law that prohibited the operation of Class 3 bicycles. Those are ones that go in excess of 20 miles an hour. There had been a prohibition on Class 3 electric bikes statewide on bike paths or trails, bikeways, bike lanes, and equestrian and hiking trails in state parks. And it allowed local authorities to prohibit Class 1 and Class 2 electric bicycles. Those are the ones that go below 20 miles an hour. The AB 1909 removes that statewide prohibition and devolves the authority to the local agencies. So that can open up some discretion to allow Class 3 bikes on some trails where it might be appropriate.
Are you hearing about any trails that are going to be opened up to those 20?
No, I don't have details on where that might be, but that's what the bill authorizes.
Allow for. That's interesting for commutes.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up for me. You're breaking up for me. I don't know if you're breaking up for others. So AB 2061, what this bill does is for any charging station public charging station that had received public funding, and that's a lot of them, to be installed, they will be required to report on uptime, because of course, as we all know, inoperable, non-functional charging has been a big problem. So this will require reporting for the percentage of time that a charging station is actually functioning. So next slide. 2075. So this one is, yeah, okay. So currently this agency called the California Building Standards Commission had sort of the sole authority to work on the process of developing standards for EV charging in multi-unit dwellings. This bill requires that the California Energy Commission is engaged in that with the California Building Standards Commission, maybe for obvious reasons that, this is highly technical. Building Standards Commission, basically really does need to engage with Energy Commission to be able to get it right. So that's what that one's all about. This is also for multifamily buildings and non-residential development. So new construction
Can I ask a
standards.
couple of questions on that? That and the
Sure.
first you spoke about?
Yeah.
Title 24, the 2022 version of it, covers EV charging and the percentage of EV charging required for multifamily. So it has a lot of standards. So the two questions was, didn't understand why the first bill was necessary, because there actually is a provision that's there already as part of the Title 24 Part 11. And the second is, does that mean that CARB has to go back and restate what's in Title 24 for 2022? That's just being adopted now if the CEC is the decision maker.
Yeah, I think I was able to hear that. So there is a lot of overlap, and legislation and regulations are sort of sedimentary. They layer them one on the other. I think that what this is about is, things are evolving. So yes, there are requirements and standards in the latest Title 24 revision. My sense for this bill, for AB 2075, is going forward, California Building Standards Commission needs to collaborate, engage with the Energy Commission on these standards as they are updated, upgraded, whatever. So it's forward looking. And yeah, you're absolutely right. There's several previous bills that relate to EV charging infrastructure in non-residential development and multi-unit dwellings. There's Title 24. I think this is forward-looking, and it's really saying, look, we need the Energy Commission to have a hand in this.
Yeah. For instance, you should also know, in the city of Sebastopol, in our zoning, we have requirements in the city of Sebastopol for EV charging and multifamily as well. And it would seem that those are redundant or actually conflict with both Title 24 and this provision. So maybe at the city level, I'll have to bring that up with the planning department.
That could be, yeah. I mean, there's the sort of theoretical policy level, and then there's the actual implementation or deployment, and that's where, quite often you discover conflicts or redundancies. So, that's a good point. And so, yeah, as things get deployed or implemented, it's good to look for that, so you can have the policies be consistent with what's consistent with each other, the regulations and the legislation. I don't know if that's helpful, but anyway, yeah. So forward looking. Next one. 2700 should be the next one.
Here we go.
And so this one is all about requiring the utilities to provide data with reporting to the legislature and the CPUC about the anticipated demand for the deployment of all the EV charging and the increases in electric vehicles around the state. This is to ensure that distribution systems are upgraded at the times and the locations necessary to support the level of increased EV usage around the state. So yeah, obviously something needed, but I'll just say that, you know, there's a general sense that, oh, EVs, they're just going to increase the load on the grid, but we all know that there's vehicle grid integration, V2G, that will allow the, you know, a much better opportunity for management of the grid as we hit critical mass, and we're already, you know, getting there. We're there or getting there with, you know, over 1 million EVs on the road and the heavy duty sector increasing. And so we've got an ability to actually have those vehicles provide juice, especially during peak episodes when they're needed. So it's not just a case of, you know, this is a critique I had of this bill, which is it seems to take a sort of simplistic view that EVs are just load. So a little commentary from me on that.
Does this also change then the requirement for all the load serving entities as far as how they report resource adequacy?
Like a,
It would not yet. That point has been made in comments to the CPUC about, you know, allowing bidding these kinds of resources into resource adequacy. Resource adequacy, for anyone that might not know, is just the requirement that load serving entities, the PG&Es of the world, the Sonoma Clean Power CCAs of the world, requiring them to have an amount of power that ensures that they will be able to provide power during peak episodes, so at all times. And so right now you can't bid into the market because the regulations aren't really there, and the technologies, as Tor mentioned in his comment in the chat, you know, are those buses, you know, two-way? Are they prepared for vehicle grid integration? I don't know, probably not. They need to be critically important so that we can actually use those resources, those energy storage resources when we need it, and it could be bid into resource adequacy.
there's so much opportunity around kind of planning for when you charge your car. And, you know, part of it is like on your daily commute, what time of day, but also what time of week. You're not charging every day.
Mm-hmm.
And a heat wave's coming, you know, you could plan ahead.
Right. Absolutely. And, you know, when the governor, when the word was put out, hey, don't charge your EVs, you know, that's used as a slam against the whole EV community and whatnot. Like, said, like, see, you know, your EVs aren't so great. Everybody need to turn them off. We're not going to have enough juice. Well, I mean, most people aren't charging in that 4 to 9 p.m. ramp time. They can charge at other times. You know, when demand is low at night, there are some benefits to charging at night when the demand is low. Absolutely, we've known for several years now that with a surplus of solar in the day, that's when we need to be, that's when we really want to be charging. So yes, when, you know, when you're charging matters. I think we can go to the next one if that question was answered.
12:30. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is just, as it says right there, that this is simply a measure to simplify the process for applying for zero emission vehicle incentive programs. There's longstanding, you know, awareness that, first of all, making people even aware that certain incentives or subsidies exist is problematic, especially in hard to reach communities. And then even if they know about it, sometimes the application process can be really difficult. So this bill has several provisions to simplify that process. Oh, and by the way, there are links to each bill in the bottom of the slide. So those little green things along the bottom are links to the actual bill with all the details of what the bill actually does. And, you know, when you go there, there's a section on, well, there's a section on bill analysis, and the committee analyses are really some of the best things to look at when you want to look at a bill. So when you go to click on those and you see the text of the bill, and you can read the text, but sometimes that's just a lot of gobbly-gobble. The bill analyses from the committees, like the Energy Committee or the Transportation Committee, that's where those committee staff members really put a lot of it quite often into easier to understand language. So there's a little side point there. SB 1251 by Gonzalez, Elena Gonzalez. This one establishes an Office of Zero Emission Vehicle Equity Advocate in the governor's office. This is to steer the development of shared cross-agency definition of equity and to set an equity agenda for the deployment of light, medium, and heavy-duty zero-emission vehicles, the supporting infrastructure, and workforce development. So just really a recognition that the highest priority is to make sure that as we transition to EVs, the lower income communities, historically underserved communities are, you know, are sharing in the benefits, right? So, so yeah, that's a good one. So on unfinished business, couple of bills I will touch on. So AB 1218, I'm sure we all recall that the governor issued an executive order, is it in 2020? To, you know, cease registration of new gas cars by 2035. That executive order is still not law. It's just sort of a governor's wish, if you will. That, you know, it's a little more than that because the Air Resources Board and other agencies are gearing up and doing things that are aiming to achieve that goal, but it's still not law. So AB 1218 was intended to ensconce that mandate into law. There will be another effort, I'm sure, next year to do that. All the advocates, you know, the coalitions the Climate Center works in and others are working to push that up to 2030. So yeah, we think 2030 is not too soon to do that. Given the life expectancy of any gas car, so any gas cars still coming out in 2030 is going to be around in 2040, 2045. And then 1482 had a lot of support. And again, this is another one of those, is this redundant? Is this overlap? This was a bill that had a huge amount of coalition support in the legislature, a lot of people pushing for it, which would have required access to EV charging for every dwelling unit in a multifamily dwelling. I mean, you know, if you look at everything else that's on the books, you know, it still isn't enough to ensure that everybody that lives in a multifamily dwelling actually can charge their vehicle. So that's what that one was, I think. So those are all the bills. Can we pause now and maybe see if there are any other questions or comments about the bills? Because next I want to move into Prop 30.
I'm curious about 1482 and what the current percentage requirement is, if there is one. Like, do you have to have EV charging on a new multi-unit dwelling for some percentage?
Title 24, there's a requirement.
And it's more like 25% or something?
I've got to look at it again.
Yeah.
It depends.
I can't hear what Jerry's saying.
Okay. Any better if I stand over here?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So in the 2022 regulation, there actually is percentage. It's not a simple number because it's done by the size of the unit. It also has to do what tier you're in, as far as your city, as far as what they've adopted. But there's absolutely a specification that's part of Title 24 in the 2022 regulations. So I haven't seen the final adopted version, and all I saw was proposed one back in November. So I haven't looked at the newest details on it, but it's there already. One question I have about it is, if we end up doing things like this, I'm looking at some new articles which have to do with alternative ways of charging, which might lead to alignment of the charging being at the right time, and inductive charging while you're driving is actually going to be tested. There'll be an article on it next month, hopefully, because I submitted it. And if that turns out to be the case, and we put regulations say you have to have charge stations every place, it could be one of those things like you've got to have a gas outlet in the ceiling so you have light. Maybe
Yeah.
we do want those regs, maybe we don't want those regs. We don't know yet.
Yeah, so here's a piece of homework on this one that I did not do, which would be for this meeting, which would be the governor typically in a veto, not always, but quite often, will have an accompanying veto statement and will explain why he vetoed a bill, especially one like this. There may be a veto statement and it would explain why he's vetoing it. And that could be one of the reasons, could be that there is anticipation that, hey, we may not need charging at for every single unit in a multifamily dwelling. There may be other options for that kind of charging. So, that could be the case. I don't know. I'm curious, so I will go ahead.
The comments that I got both from a person at PG&E that I talk to regularly and from Jeff Cypers, CEO of Sonoma Clean Power, was rather than requiring charging at apartments and homes, they wanted to see requirements that every job site must have charging at every parking space for the job site, because that aligns with when the power is actually available.
Yeah. And when I think of an apartment building, I think, if you get it to 75 or 80% of all spaces have access to charging, the other spaces can be used by the electric cars that are already charged.
Yeah, so I think in this conversation we're seeing that maybe it was a correct move for the governor to or to veto this one. That there may be other options that are actually less costly and more practical and all that than requiring that 100%. So yeah, right. Discussion. Any other questions on any of the other bills? I haven't been able to look in the chat, so if there's anything in the chat, let me know. Or any other questions? I hope we have time for Prop 30.
Yeah, let's talk about Prop 30. I'm excited about the idea of getting 1218 to be ending gas car sales by 2030. That just sounds clean and clear.
Yes, and I think the push should be for 2030. There's a lot of things lining up where, in other countries, and with some of the California, goals, 2030 is definitely, in my view, not too soon. So I think advocacy toward that from the Auto Association, EV Auto Association, other like-minded folks is going to be needed, I think, next session to push for 2030 instead of 2035. So Prop 30, yeah, this is going to be on the November 8th ballot. And it is an initiative that actually originated in mid-2020, fall of 2020. I was actually in some of the early discussions, organizing meetings that were put together by Move LA and Spur, and a bunch of other organizations involved in those conversations, Coalition for Clean Air, others, to figure out how to have a ballot initiative that would really significantly accelerate the transition, right? Because there is money in the state, and I can talk about that. I actually meant to talk about it earlier. We can talk about it now. Over $10 billion in the state budget over the next 5 years for zero vehicle development. And there's also in the infrastructure or Inflation Reduction Act, about $12 million coming. We need more than that. And this measure will provide like twice the amount, 2 to 3 times the amount for the vehicles, and 10 to 15 times the amount for the charging infrastructure. So what is it? it is a 1.75% tax on households earning 2 million or more dollars per year. That's like 0.2% of the population. It's about 35,000 households in the state. So it's a very small pool of taxpayers that would be impacted by this at all. And they are all, super wealthy folks. So it's, really looking at going to where there is, where there's money. So progressive tax, and it would really just restore their tax level to what it was before the Trump tax cuts in 2017. It's expected to raise roughly $100 billion over the next 20 years. It has a 20-year life plan. So it will expire after 20 years. The breakdown of where the money goes is 45% to zero emission vehicles. The vehicles themselves, half of that is earmarked for low income folks. And then there's a further breakdown of what zero emissions vehicles that would go to. And then 35% for charging infrastructure. And I will say that for both the vehicle side and the infrastructure side, there is a 10-ish% allocation for, they use the term zero emission vehicle, not electric vehicle. So that includes things like hydrogen. And so including hydrogen for passenger vehicles, which is something that I don't personally support. This is a complex bill, by the way, and it has some pluses, some minuses. If it will absolutely accelerate adoption to EVs, but it has a strong focus on passenger vehicles. It has some, monies for heavy duty, medium and heavy duty vehicles. It also has an allocation of about 20% of it goes to CAL FIRE. And there are controversies about that. CAL FIRE's management of forest lands, which is not a subject of this particular group, but there are some significant issues with among the forest conservation biologists and forestry folks about how CAL FIRE is managing the forest. And this is basically a $20 billion over 20-year sort of blank check to CAL FIRE. There's no at least currently in the initiative, there's nothing in the initiative that spells out how they would use those monies. As the 20 years rolls out, there could be, opportunities to sort of sort that out. But as it stands, there are a lot of folks that would be concerned about that. It's the same thing for all of the other chunks of the proposition, which is that the money, it will actually go to the state agencies that already are working on zero emission vehicles. So it would go to the Air Resources Board, the California Energy Commission, for supporting the existing programs. There's a lot of disinformation out there from the No on 30 campaign. I put the Yes on 30 link in this slide. In my view, the information that's provided there is factual and accurate. The No on 30 side has actually been found in a Sacramento court to have been placed a misleading their statement on the ballot was found to be misleading, and so there's been other sort of factual inaccuracies. In terms of support, there's a broad level of support from sort of environmental, health, elected, organizations, and sort of public health organizations, environmental organizations, labor, the labor community. Labor community is a bit split. The California Teachers Association opposes it because they believe that, or feel that somehow this could somehow remove funds or they would miss out on funds that should go to education. This is an additional tax. It's additional monies, so that it wouldn't impact education funds in any way. It wouldn't reduce them or cut into them in any way. And the governor has come out in opposition. And so his statement is roughly that, you know, we're already doing this, we don't need more. Well, actually, to get where we need to be, we do need more. So, you know, I think that he's probably has other reasons why he is concerned about that incremental tax increase on folks earning $2 million or more a year. He's probably, lots of friends of his are in that category, and so he's probably heard from them. You know, I'll stop there and just let the conversation roll out from the questions that could come in, because there's tons more, but that's the broad outline. And so why don't we jump into questions?
One thought I had about the tax is that it's a state tax on the rich, and there's a lot of talk about federal taxes on the rich. And so I don't know if Gavin Newsom is concerned about the chance that there would be more federal taxes on the rich that would make this kind of like a overly punitive or overly ambitious, but that's not happening right now, you know. Federal tax on the rich is actually quite low, is my thought. But I don't know if anyone's heard about that.
I mean, I haven't heard any conversation or arguments that relate to what these folks, wealthy folks, are taxed at the federal level, and that there's some kind of reason why, because they're taxed at the federal level, they shouldn't be taxed in this way at the state level. I have not heard that argument in all of the conversations I've had. I see Mike's hand up. Mike?
Yeah, it wasn't about the tax on the wealthy part of it, but maybe Woody, I didn't hear you or pay attention close enough. Did you talk about the infrastructure? Like, so what does this 35% for infrastructure go towards?
Yeah, I mean, it goes toward electric, the lion's share of it, to electric vehicle charging infrastructure through the state agencies that are already involved in that effort to expand EV charging. So like the EVIP program and things like that is where that 35% goes for everything from, you know, light duty to medium and heavy duty, so fleets, and you know, in the form of competitive grants, in the form of you know, those kinds of mechanisms for getting the dollars out, as they've always been, you know, come out. And, you know, I didn't even mention that. So the other piece of the opposition that you often hear about this is, oh, this is it is being funded almost entirely by the ride hailing service Lyft. Lyft came in several months after the initial conversations started becoming sort of more broadly known about this concept, and came in and super strongly supported it and have been the lion's share of the funding for it. So it's being sort of characterized as a Lyft initiative, that they wrote it and it's their thing, and that it's a bailout for them. Now, the reason why they support it, and I see you guys hands up, I'll get to you in a second, David and Tor. Lyft and all of the other ride hailing services were required in mid to late 2021, an ARB ruling that by 2030, here's that 2030 date again, 90% of the vehicles used for the ride hailing service must be zero emission. And that the place where that would happen is the ride hailing service themselves providing some kind of resources to their drivers to obtain those zero emission vehicles. that was the expectation on that. That was the burden placed on regulatory burden placed on them. So it is seen as a as a get out of jail free card for a way for the ride hailing services to shift that burden onto to these particular, in this case, taxpayers, to help make that transition happen and help them get to that 90%. So yeah, you could look at it in that cynical way. None of the money in Prop 30, I will say, goes to any ride hailing service, to any corporation to lift. The subsidies go to the owners of the vehicles themselves. So to the extent that any Lyft driver is getting support to get into an EV, it goes to that Lyft driver, not to the company Lyft. Okay, I will go to David first.
Okay, well, I actually got started thinking about hydrogen again with the questions about smart electrifying. And, I think we're all clear that for light vehicles, battery-based electrification is pretty clear. But heavier vehicles, well, we can see that long-haul trucking is viable now with batteries, but ocean-going ships are going to require a higher density. That's where hydrogen is going to come into play. And what's going to happen with long-haul railroads? I don't know. I mean, I guess I would guess that they may be going in the hydrogen direction, and so I wouldn't always rule out that some of this support should not go to hydrogen. And I did comment last month about this process of converting methane to hydrogen and elemental carbon. And I tried to do a little research and find out how much methane is being produced by, things like our landfills, et cetera. I mean, and a lot of what's being emitted by composting, et cetera, or even the methane that's being captured at landfills is then being burned to produce CO2. Well, okay, that reduces it from methane, but it would be better to be producing hydrogen from human sourced as opposed to fossil fuel methane, natural gas. So the whole story on hydrogen, I think, is do some more research. I mean, just to understand where the dynamics are going on those questions.
Yeah, I'll respond to that. First, on the production side, absolutely, not supportive of, the Climate Center is not supportive of any kind of fossil-based steam reformation of natural gas as a means of producing hydrogen. The push, the need is to get to, affordable, renewables-based electrolytic hydrogen. No ifs, ands, or buts. And on the application side, absolutely, there are hard to electrify sectors in heavy duty, long haul, aviation, marine applications. Yes, in this case, what I'm saying here is that Prop 30 has provisions for public monies, well, actually, okay, that would go to light duty. And really, I mean, in the light duty sector, I think the way to go is battery electric. That question, I shifted gears on that in around 2015. It's clear that, you've got a better mousetrap. It's more efficient. There's no reason to go to hydrogen for passenger vehicles in my view. So that's my personal.
Oh, yeah. I think there's no question about that, Woody, but the question of to look at how much methane that humans have some control over it being made, by anaerobic digestion, et cetera, to then turn it into CO2.
Okay, well, that sounds like
we do. There is an alternative to burning all of those byproduct methanes.
Got it. Thank you. I'm going to move to Tor.
Okay, so one of my observations in Norway was there was a lot of car share companies, a lot of their vehicles electric, variety of electric. And so my question, and talking to folks that use those regularly. So my question for the Prop 30 is, when it says low income, is car share anywhere in this bill? Any supporting those kind of solutions?
There is nothing in the proposition about car sharing, zero.
Okay.
I've read the entire thing, by the way, several times and done annotated versions. Nothing about car sharing, no.
Is any of the,
You know what? There is getting into some of these little obscure things, and I'll get back to you in a second. And we've had conversations about this. The last time I recall, actually, was quite a while ago when it was still at Thunderstruck. There's provisions in there, monies that would go to converting existing fleets from gas to to electric, and creating a jobs program sort of thing for taking gas cars and converting them to electric. And I think what I heard loud and clear from the discussions we had back in the day was that's highly problematic and probably not a good idea. Tor, I think you were trying to say one more thing. Did you want to finish?
I mean, I just sort of ongoing conversations is when, American way is everybody in the household has their own car, and we're trying to live with one car, and a car share just seems like something that would be a way to help towards that for any income type of family. It's like, because we're just replacing gas cars with electric alone, it's not going to solve the problem.
That's right. And I'd see that's a valid criticism of this measure is that it really is just about, just guns ablaze and to switch out everybody that's in a gas car to an electric car. And I agree with you. We have to reduce vehicles miles traveled. We have to get more people into clean emission transit, bicycling, all that good stuff. And this bill, this measure is not about that. It is really focused on just saying, oh, okay, everybody's going to keep driving, but we want you to drive an EV. That's really the sentiment in this measure.
And that, everything's imperfect, right? So that doesn't mean it's not a worthy bill. But did in any of the other legislation that you mentioned, do you recall any car sharing called out at all? Nothing?
No, and you know what? Let's put a pin in that for legislation idea for next session. A car sharing a bill. There was not one in the last session that I'm aware of.
Okay, thanks.
And so I think, David, I'll get to you in a second. Brad hasn't chimed in yet, so let's go to Brad.
Sure, yeah. I posted a couple links in the chat. One of them is the Ballotopedia, which I actually don't like their layout very much, but it was the first one that I could find on the campaign finance information. So whenever I'm trying to analyze a proposition, or really any kind of political measure, I go basically based on who's funding it. I was surprised, actually. I mean, $35 million is the cash donation amount that Lyft apparently contributed to Prop 30, the Yes on 30 side, which is what 35 times the next highest amount, which is $1 million by the IBEW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. On the no side, there are like 3 or 4 different contributions of $1 million, all by individuals I've never heard of before, but I'm assuming they would be subject to this more than $2 million a year tax. So that's one thing that I thought was interesting, because I guess no on 30 has raised like about 10 or 11 million. So it would be, yeah, I mean, they'd be outspending the Yes on 30 side by like, I don't know, 4 or 5 to 1 if Lyft wasn't involved. So that was one point I noticed. Second point is I was surprised that Uber hasn't contributed anything to it, considering I would assume that they have actually more drivers in California than Lyft does. So that's something I thought was interesting. And then third point, regarding Gavin Newsom's objection to spending public taxpayer dollars on private infrastructure. I mean, I've been fighting a lot against PG&E in the last year or so, and frankly, him or State Senator Mike McGuire has no qualms about, throwing, whether it's infrastructure funding or various other taxpayer dollars from the state or federal towards PG&E projects, whether it's Diablo Canyon or the recently passed or signed, Governor Newsom signed it, the $100 billion directed towards undergrounding all these utility lines for PG&E. So anyways, a few points on those.
Yep, those are good points, and everything you said is correct. And I will also affirm that yes, those contributions are from the individuals and whatnot. We're all coming from, individuals in this class of taxpayers that would be that the tax would be applied to. Yeah. David again.
Yeah, I do have a specific question on Prop 30, but let me first say that I would find it useful for us to have a program on just what the carbon footprint of automobile production is, and are we getting to numbers of the carbon footprint of producing an ICE versus a battery electric? I mean, but still that point
on that point, just for each point, it's an opportunity to respond. Union of Concerned Scientists has done analysis on that.
Okay.
The carbon footprint, the apples to apples comparison of lifetime of EV versus gas. So I could refer you to that.
Okay, good.
Find the link or something and
right. I'll look for the link.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, the whole idea, there are a lot of EV people who don't think about the fact that there's still a need to reduce vehicle miles traveled even once you've got an EV. But the specific question here, I would assume this is a graduated, this 1.75%, the way it's going to impact high income earners, it's going to be on the top bracket, which is what, over 250,000 or something, right? It isn't a flat tax on all their 2 million. It's just jacking up the highest tax bracket, I would assume.
Right. I mean, so yeah, so Cecilia, to your point, it's not just on that 2 million or just people who earn just 2 million. Like a lot of these people are billionaires. So, it's not simple math. There's a lot of folks that will, that 1.75% adds up to a lot when you're talking about 1.75 on.
Right, but even so, we're nowhere close to the 70% to 90% brackets that existed in the 50s for high income earners. We're anywhere close to that, even yet on all of these, you're still not probably at 50% in the highest bracket.
It's a very low amount of tax. Cecilia was trying to say something. What were you trying to say, Cecilia?
I was just looking at the base level. It's, if you were really, really, wanting to hold on to that money, even that base level you have, you would definitely come out ahead, donate $1 million if you're able to get it knocked past.
Good point. Other questions? I think we're probably bumping up against the clock here. Sonia, where are we at in terms of time?
Yeah, we've got 7 minutes left, and we usually like to do a little quick wind down. This has been great. We have 7 minutes left, and it's nice to do a little wind down on a couple of the last points about the meeting. But I wanted to stop and check in with everyone, see if we're concluded on Prop 30. Are you still is everyone else having trouble hearing us?
I can hear you fine.
Oh, okay. Great.
Jerry was the one that was hard to hear.
Oh, okay.
So the last slide is just I think I've got my contact info on the last slide. Yeah, that's me.
Great. And Woody, when you do these presentations, do you like to think of yourself as doing them as a personal person or as a climate center person?
That's a good question. And, the Climate Center has its positions, and I'm not always 100% in alignment with their position. The Climate Center has endorsed this proposition, and there's a lot I like about it. I have some issues with it, as we've talked about, here today. It's kind of a mixed bag. I mean, I wear several hats. I'm with the Sebastopol Climate Action Committee. I'm with the Coalition Opposing New Gas Stations. So, pick your hat, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
And I'm a member of the North Bay I'm a member of the North Bay Electric Auto Association too. And so I think about these things I try to think about them from the perspective. And when I put this together, it's like, what's relevant to the NBEAA, right? There's tons of bills, there's tons of issues, and I tried to hone it down to just what might matter to this group. And I see Tor's hand.
Oh, if I can just, I dropped something in the chat. I'd seen this editorial in the PD a week or so ago, and they were just observing all the electrification, grid upgrade, with more renewables, all these goals. And they just sort of openly asked, like, who at the state level is informing all this? Because it seems like a lot of pieces without a clear vision. And I've always wondered that, like, who's in charge, so to speak, modeling the future? I don't know, Woody, if you've seen or can have any insight on like who or an agency that's sort of modeling the future
So the Air
openly?
Resources Board is in the midst of their scoping plan right now, and they are doing all kinds of modeling on that. And the governor charged them with modeling for, a phase down of fossil fuel use, with commensurate demand reduction with a target of 2045. And, they're screaming foul about that would not screaming foul, but just saying that, we can't phase out fossil fuels by 2045 is what they're saying, what the Air Resources Board with the current modeling, is saying. So that's, the Air Resources Board has a big chunk of it. California Energy Commission. I mean, it's these state agencies that are, working on it. I will say I do see a lot of siloing, and that the Public Utilities Commission and the Energy Commission and CalGEM, the California Geological and Energy Management Agency, and the Air Resources Board, they don't integrate, and they need to. David, one last time. You're on mute.
Okay. I was listening. Oh, I did in another meeting. Somebody brought up the fact that CARB had a model online that you could, put your own scenario in, and okay, changing to an EV, what would that do to my carbon footprint? And I thought, well, this will be very interesting to play with, and say, okay, if everybody switched to EVs, what would that do? And the next time I went back to the app, it was deactivated. Do you know, have you seen that app that individuals could use?
I think I have, and I think I've seen several things like that where but yeah,
I'll see if I can find that app, but I was very disappointed to see that it would have been deactivated.
There's several carbon footprint apps, and the one at UC Berkeley, I think, is the most comprehensive because it includes your income and the inferred amount of shopping you do. And travel. And so, if people are interested in experiencing carbon footprint calculation, I would suggest they Google the UC Berkeley version.
Great.
Yeah. It turns out once you get all the things done that you think you need to do, you have to also stop shopping. Yeah. So I'll advance the screens if you don't mind, Woody.
That's fine. Thank you, everybody.
Wrap up.
Thanks for all the great questions. Hope it was worthwhile and all that.
Yeah. So next month, Jerry and Caleb were down in San Diego. I think it'd be great to, make next month a fully charged meeting if you guys are willing.
someplace about 6 miles over Canada.
And so you won't even participate. December then. It might be relevant enough in December.
Well, you can play it, it's only 7 minutes.
Preview at this point. I think I should wrap a little bit.
All right.
And do the slide advance. That's kind of cool that you added it in a way that worked. So we have our next meeting in November. If Jerry's out as well, and we do it at Thunderstruck, I'm just kind of thinking through that we might have a very simplified version of hybrid. And Cecilia, I don't know if you want to make a road trip or not, but it's meaningful to me if you do or don't, because I might need a little tech support. So we can talk offline about that, but for November, let's not, even though you're not going to be here, let's see if we can't do the couple things to get ourselves to Thunderstruck, and that would be get John and Brian's permission and think through a simple hybrid solution. That's about all we'd need to do.